The woman I'm thinking of, she loved me all up.
Neil Young has never chased perfection. His voice cracked, his guitar bent out of tune, his records often sounded rawer than the times demanded. But that was the point. Young's music lived in the fractures, where beauty met defiance, where truth spoke louder than polish.
When it happened for the first time, it was something special, because there you were, and there were 500,000 people, and we're just realizing, hey, we have a generation.
Through decades of reinvention, from Buffalo Springfield to Crazy Horse, from acoustic whispers to electric storms, Neil Young has carried one constant: the belief that music must come from the gut, or it isn't worth a note. And when it comes to what he values most, his choices reveal more than taste. They reveal a creed. The bands and artists he holds above the rest are not about fashion, not about fame. They are about endurance, courage, and a refusal to bend when the world demands compromise.
Here's a girl just down the aisle, ought to turn and see her smile. When the winter rains come pouring down.
So when Neil Young finally revealed his favorites, it was not a list. It was a philosophy, carved in feedback and silence. Here are the 5 names Neil Young raised above all others. Number 5. The Doors. Few bands captured the chaos of the late 1960s like the Doors. For Neil Young, their music wasn't just sound, it was atmosphere. Jim Morrison's poetry and Ray Manzarek's organ carved out a dark, swirling space where freedom and danger lived side by side. Young admired how they blurred the line between performance and ritual, between rock concert and seance. Their sound didn't chase harmony, it pursued tension. The Doors moved as if each performance could veer off a cliff at any moment, and that edge fascinated Young. Morrison's presence was volatile, half prophet, half outlaw. He was unpredictable, the kind of figure who made an audience hold its breath because no one knew if the next moment would be brilliance or collapse. To Young, that unpredictability was not a flaw, but the rawest form of honesty.
When you stray, no one remembers your name. When you stray.
The connection wasn't only about chaos, it was about freedom. Young has often praised artists who refused to cage themselves, and the Doors embodied that rebellion. They fused jazz drumming with blues guitar, organ swells with poetry that could be whispered or screamed. For Young, that refusal to conform was proof that music should never serve the market before it served the spirit. Expose what you're feeling inside. That's what people will connect to, Neil Young once said. Songs like The End or Riders on the Storm were not built for radio. They were built for immersion. Their length, their mood, their refusal to resolve into neat choruses made them dangerous. And in that danger, Neil Young heard possibility.
And if you have no fear, and you believe in yourself, and you only listen to yourself, you are number one. Everything else is behind you.
He admired how the Doors showed courage and vulnerability. To walk on stage without a net, sometimes sublime, sometimes shattering, was, to Young, the essence of artistry. If you're not risking failure, you're not really creating, Young once reflected. For him, the Doors proved that imperfection could be theater, that collapse could be communion, that a song could act as both sermon and storm. Number 4. Jimi Hendrix. When Young spoke of Hendrix, it was with awe, not envy. Hendrix turned electricity into language, bending feedback into something human. Young once said that watching Hendrix made him realize the guitar wasn't just an instrument, it was an open channel. That fearlessness stayed with him, shaping his own approach to distortion and improvisation. Hendrix wasn't interested in neatness. He pushed his Stratocaster past the breaking point, coaxing screams, whispers, and walls of sound that felt alive. Neil Young recognized that same desire in himself, to make the guitar speak not just notes, but emotions. It wasn't technique for its own sake. It was chaos refined into truth. For Young, Hendrix represented the courage to go too far. In a world where rock bands often clung to structure, Hendrix tore structure apart, building performances that felt like storms, violent, beautiful, unrepeatable. That danger, that willingness to risk collapse, was the same principle guiding Young's own live shows. "If you're not willing to break the rules, you'll never find anything new," Neil Young once reflected. The connection was not about imitation. Young never tried to play like Hendrix. Instead, he absorbed the lesson. Distortion could be more than noise. It could be a voice of resistance, a way of saying the unsayable. In songs like Cortez the Killer or Like a Hurricane, Young's solos stretch into feedback-soaked meditations, owing more to Hendrix's spirit than his technique. What Hendrix offered was liberation, the idea that rock could reject polish and still reach transcendence. His short career burned like a flare, and Neil Young carried that fire forward, proving that imperfection could be transcendent if it came from the heart. "He opened a door, and once you step through, you can't go back," Young once said. Hendrix taught him that the guitar wasn't bound to rules, it was bound only to the truth of the moment. Number 3. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was more than an influence. He was a compass. Young saw in Dylan the ability to reinvent without apology, to wield words like blades and still carry melody as if it were a banner. Their paths crossed often, both on stage and in spirit. Dylan gave permission for vulnerability and rage to coexist, something Young would echo for decades. Dylan had no interest in pleasing the crowd. He turned his back on folk purists, went electric at Newport, and endured boos that would have broken most artists. Neil Young admired that defiance. It wasn't rebellion for spectacle, it was rebellion for truth. For Young, Dylan proved that songs didn't need smooth voices or perfect arrangements. They needed conviction. A lyric could sting sharper than a solo, and Dylan's verses reshaped what rock could carry. His songs weren't entertainment, they were literature set to rhythm, poetry disguised as protest. "The only way to be real is to keep changing," Dylan once remarked. Young carried that ethos into his own work. From the gentle folk of Harvest to the roaring feedback of Rust Never Sleeps, his career mirrored Dylan's refusal to stand still. Reinvention wasn't strategy, it was survival. But admiration turned into dialogue. When the two shared stages, Young often leaned into Dylan's phrasing, harmonizing roughly, honoring the words more than the notes. It was a partnership born of mutual stubbornness, two men unwilling to sand down their edges. "You can't fake who you are on stage, people know," Neil Young once said. What Dylan gave Young was not just influence, but permission. Permission to be unruly, to be imperfect, to let the truth of a lyric matter more than the sheen of performance. Dylan showed that a single line could cut deeper than an entire guitar solo. For Young, he was not simply an idol. He was proof that conviction could be art, and that honesty could echo louder than applause. Number 2, the Rolling Stones. Where the Beatles offered craft, the Stones delivered grit. For Neil Young, they embodied rawness, the sound of a band barely holding together, yet always finding fire. He admired how Keith Richards turned imperfection into swagger, and how Jagger's sneer could carry both irony and sincerity. To Young, the Stones proved that looseness could be power. The Rolling Stones lived on the edge of collapse. Their songs often sounded as if they might disintegrate mid-performance, yet that very instability created energy. Young found liberation in that looseness. He admired Richards' ragged guitar style, built on open tunings and mistakes turned into hooks. It reminded him that music didn't have to be precise to be alive. Young often said that the Stones carried rebellion in their bones. Where other bands cultivated polish, the Stones embraced sweat, dirt, and chaos. They were the band you trusted not because they were perfect, but because they weren't. Rock and roll isn't supposed to be clean, it's supposed to be alive, Neil Young once remarked. That philosophy shaped Young's own approach. Like the Stones, he leaned into rawness, whether with Crazy Horse's thundering feedback or acoustic sets recorded in barns and shacks. Imperfection wasn't something to hide, it was something to amplify.
Just turned 22. I was wondering what to do.
What fascinated Young was their survival. The Stones weathered scandal, addiction, and changing times, yet always returned with music that felt dangerous. That resilience spoke to him as much as the songs. Their catalog carried both chaos and continuity, and that duality inspired him to stay the course when critics and labels doubted his own choices. The secret isn't never falling. It's always getting back up, Young once said. In the Stones, Neil Young saw the clearest proof that rock's essence was endurance through chaos. They showed him that looseness was not weakness, it was fuel, a fire that burned brighter because it was never under control. The Stones taught him that survival, as much as sound, was the ultimate measure of authenticity. Number 1. The Beatles. At the top of Young's list stood the Beatles, not for their polish, but for their courage. They rewrote the rules of recording, shifted the boundaries of songwriting, and showed what it meant to evolve in public without fear. Young has often said that the Beatles changed everything. For him, they were proof that popular music could be art, rebellion, and heart without ever losing its soul. The Beatles weren't just a band, they were an evolution unfolding in real time. Each album broke open a new chapter of possibility. Rubber Soul expanded lyricism, Sgt. Pepper's reinvented production, and the White Album revealed the beauty of contradiction. For Neil Young, their journey offered proof that transformation was not only allowed, it was essential, even when it confused or angered audiences.
Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be.
What struck him most was their willingness to leap into the unknown. Songs veered from Indian ragas to orchestral crescendos to stripped-down blues. The Beatles never let themselves be confined by audience expectations. The Beatles didn't just make music, they made possibilities, Neil Young once said. But beyond experimentation was vulnerability. They sang about longing, love, doubt, and hope with a directness that reached millions. Young admired that honesty, and he carried it forward in his own confessional writing. Their music proved that intimacy could live alongside revolution. To Young, the Beatles also proved that tension could be fruitful. Conflict within the band often birthed masterpieces, a reminder that friction could sharpen creativity rather than destroy it. Their breakup was tragic, but even that was a testament to their humanity. They were artists, not machines, and their imperfection was part of their greatness. Great art doesn't come from comfort, it comes from daring, Young reflected. For Neil Young, the Beatles were not just the best, they were the foundation. They showed that music could challenge, heal, and transcend. In their courage, he found the blueprint for his own restless path. A reminder that the greatest gift a band can give is the courage to keep searching, never standing still, always moving toward the next horizon. Neil Young's choices were never about popularity or sales. They were about survival, spirit, and truth. The Doors, Hendrix, Dylan, the Stones, the Beatles, each carried the same refusal to surrender. They showed him that music was not entertainment alone, but a lifeline, a way of carving meaning from the noise of the world. What binds them is not style, but courage. The courage to risk failure, to embrace imperfection, to chase possibility no matter the cost. In their voices, Neil Young heard reflections of his own restless journey. Never polished, never easy, but always alive. And that is why his list matters. It is not nostalgia, it is a reminder. Music endures because it dares. It asks us to listen more deeply, to feel more honestly, and to carry those truths into our own lives. Which of Neil Young's choices resonates most with you? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories that uncover the soul of music.